I've not said it yet. Happy New Year to you from all of us here to you. It's been a year, y'all. It feels like it's been, 5 minutes and also 50 years. It's been a whirlwind for me. We started out the year contending with hostile legislation with our interfaith community in Omaha. Several of you ventured with me to Lincoln to sit in long, sweaty hallways while people tossed around bad ideas, while people with less than pure good intentions from out of state came to shake things up. You were there, I was there, we were there, for righteousness' sake. We've navigated trouble within our congregation, property line things, budgetary concerns, normal things for a church. We've also navigated some personality differences, and that was really hard, but we did it, and we're here on the other side and arguably better for it because we know more of who we are and how we respond to crisis. And I'll say this congregation responded very well. Open-hearted, willing to make room for people to change and to come back to the table in love, because that's who we are, right? Open-hearted, forgiving. I hope that's how we can meet the new year. For how do you meet the anticipation of the new with all the possibilities of a year, particularly in a time like this? Any new year is a time to reflect back on who we've been, to project our imagination forward into who we might be. But it feels particularly hard to do that this go around the sun. Fresh out of pandemics. I know many people around my age and older and younger are wondering how they're going to pay student loans back now. 2 major wars. Economy is strange. I'm not an economist or a geopolitician or a student loan expert. A student loan provider certainly know that. But what I do know is how the heart skitters around in the face of anxiety and uncertainty. And uncertainty is one of those terms that's become almost cliche, right? These uncertain times, these unprecedented times. It almost feels like a cliche to make fun of how it's a cliche, so pardon. But it is. But it is uncertain. And just like any given day might be a time that we might look back, reflect back and look forward into the future, well, so too is it that it's always been something of an anxious experience, hasn't it? Anxiety gets a bad rap. It's not a fun thing to feel, right? Some of us have anxiety that overfunctions and can spiral out of control. But when I was a hospital chaplain, we talked a lot about being non-anxious, which is a $10 ministry term. But it is not to be not anxious. Anxiety is the most natural thing in the world in the face of uncertainty. It's this evolutionary predisposition for our body to get up and do something, to do something. Sometimes this manifests today, though, as not the sort of, is there something behind me in the dark while I'm hunting? It is these macro wicked problems that tangle around this world and feel ultimately unassailable. And of course, we might ask ourselves, what could I do? Or we might spiral into overfunctioning and try to control everything. Well, I believe there might be a third way, right? When we ask for help, when we accept help when it is given, when we embrace the reality that as human beings, we don't have all the answers or all the tools, and we never really have. And sometimes life throws us curveballs that challenge our sense of groundedness. And when we find ourselves on the anticipation of something big and monumental, and while New Year's Day is really just any other day, we are in the thick of it. It does feel like this is a time when we mark the turning of a thing, the measure of a year. As a millennial, besides associations with avocado toast and being a technophile, I can say that since I was 11 years old or so, I've not really known my country to be in any state of peace. And this has only intensified with time. It's become something of a meme amongst my generational cohort to commiserate for the lack of peace and stability, even among those of us who are privileged in some way. Now, we may not be walking up hills in the snow both ways, but our days are characterized by new kinds of tribulations. These threats, both global and regional, and I reckon some part of this has to do with this advent of social media, which again sounds kind of cliche, But you really can't experience the troubles of the world unless you're witnessing it, and you can witness it in a way that you never could before. I imagine this will also intensify with time. And frankly, friends, it's kind of, no, it just is a trauma. It is trauma. To be assailed with images and an understanding that the world feels like it's falling apart. And so, of course, in light of such anxious times, our hearts can spiral out of control. You know, I reckon people, in an attempt to control and contain their anxiety, get into some really heinous activity. Not necessarily because people are evil or bad per se, but because they want to control the particulars of their lives. And so they go along with a lot of bad ideas that cause people to be dismissive of the plight of their neighbor, to let a town be bombed into ruins for the sake of a status quo. Justice and peace must meet hands, else it's whose peace is it? Dr. King understood this as positive peace. And while I can't say for sure if there are good or bad people, perhaps, but I will quote Edmund Burke here. Where's my Edmund Burke quote? This 1770 Irish-English statesman, friend to the movement for American independence, wrote in his work, Thoughts on the Cause of the Present Discontents, when bad men combine, the good must associate, else they will fall one by one, an unpitied sacrifice in a contemptible struggle. Now, that's often broken down into when good people do nothing, bad people prosper. But Burke specifically uses the words combine, right? And allied, to gather together. How does one survive the complexities of our time? I mean, the most natural question that could echo in one's heart, especially if they're facing some form of vulnerability, might be, what is going to happen to me? What's going to happen to the ones that I love? What's going to happen to this world, y'all? What's going to happen? And that worry beats around in the brain, and there is no direct one answer. We can spend all of our time and all of our energy trying to control the particulars of our lives, bit by bit, and wear ourselves dry and ragged. Or we can do the other thing and drop everything and assume that it's all out of our control, right? I believe both of these are an attempt to do away with the discomfort that comes with not knowing and being able to contextualize and confirm every little variable in our lives. They are extremes, but they are extremely common. What is that third way? Not to do nothing and not to do everything, to recognize, again, first and foremost, and this is my hope for you for the new year, friends. We live in a society that has conditioned us to think that we must be more and more and more and more and more and all of the time, and you will become that, friends. But first, we must know that we are, in fact, enough. Toe to tip, just as you are. If Unitarian Universalism teaches one thing, I reckon it's this, that one thing that requests an expression of faith of a kind. It is that you matter. And that might seem cliche, but it is not a cliche. Common sense. It is not common sense to all of us, because sometimes in this world we are taught to dislike ourselves, to think that we are empty or broken in some fundamental way, that we need something else to repair us, to put us back together. And we all have cracks. But none of us are broken. Not a soul on this planet. Although some souls on this planet do seem bent on breaking others to control the variables of the problem, like the people in Nebraska who attempted to pass this heinous legislation to squash bodily autonomy. What is attempted to be controlled? What is the attempt to control here, friends? The wrong variables. The wrong variables. People looking at non-issues and turning them into problems and running rough over people all the way. But who can we be? In the face of such things, I believe that we can be, well, who we are first, an open-hearted people, open to the mystery, open to knowing that we don't know. We don't project that hubris onto mystery necessarily or onto ultimate answers. We just are here together, right? This is the thing that we can know. Spiritual awakening, enlightenment. These things don't often come with big flashes in the sky, fireworks, fanfare. It's a subtle turn. You might not even know that you have arrived. You might not even know that anything has changed within you. So it is tomorrow. If you weren't looking at a calendar, it might just be another winter's day. But every moment and any moment is not just an opportunity to change, it is change happening. Your body, this world. And who will we be in the face of the change that is necessarily to come? Are we going to try to get our hands all caught into things and fix and control and fall down exhausted because we tried to do it all ourselves? That's tempting. I do that sometimes. Or to just feel like we're helpless and hopeless and to give up all possibility of things getting better, just to cave into apathy. And maybe that's worse. Or can those two hands meet like a prayer in the middle and appeal not necessarily to something far beyond us, but just to the fact that we can survive this together. We can find that ground of our being, what holds you, what carries you, what sees you through the troubles and keeps you sticking around. Perhaps it has something to do with just the raw stuff of anxiety, not overwhelming us or breaking us, but keeping us awake and keeping us alive and keeping us turning towards one another to share what hurts and to share what shakes in our bones and shakes in our heart, to share. Friends, that's what we're here for, I reckon. Not always to be good, not always to be, certainly not to be bad, to be and to become and to experience together. What more could we ask for? Justice and peace and on earth and goodwill to all, yeah, I think we make that real ourselves in the future. But now, if there is a thing you can do right now, center yourself. The fact that you are good enough to claim goodness, worthy enough to claim worthiness, dignified enough to enter this new year with your head held high, friends, no matter who you've been or what you've done or who or how you might become. May all that is your life be holy. And when you take a measure of your year, how will you measure? Perhaps we can measure in love.